Good evening, guys. If you know anything about me, you know I love to debate. My wife tells me all the time. She sees me online, I'm typing away. She's like, "Oh, you're one of those debates, aren't you?" And something I like to have. I like to have civil conversations where someone comes back and forth with their reasons why they believe what they do. You don't get that a lot. A lot of times people are just emotions or just speaking their talking points back and forth instead of actually having a conversation. But I love having conversations about Christianity. One thing that does get on my skin in debates is the topic of abortion. I just can't see how anybody can actually argue for the sake to kill human beings, innocent little children. There's so many different reasons or justifications they try to give. And this is what I'm going to be doing today is reacting to a video about Matt Walsh. If you don't know who he is, he's part of Daily Wire. He had that video come out not too long ago of what is a woman, which is a whole other topic of how are we not able to define what a woman is? We've known for centuries what a woman is, and now we're like, oh, I don't know what a woman is anymore. But he got popped real. He was already on Daily Wire before that, but he got hugely famous from that video. So I'm going to be reacting to a video where Matt Walsh is going to be speaking about arguments that pro-choice gives, and we're going to react to that. So let's dive in.
Let's begin by setting the stage. It is a bloody stage indeed. It is a stage that has seen the slaughter of 60 million human children since Roe v. Wade. 60 million. Why do some of us find this slaughter to be unthinkable?
And some of you may look at this and hear Matt Walsh say slaughter of 60 million human beings and think that he's being using words to try to play on the emotions, but he is using the correct terms because they are human beings. Now they'll try to, the pro-choice side will try to argue, they're not really human beings yet because A or B or C, whatever reason they want to give, whether they're saying that they don't have the thinking abilities we do, they don't have the same body parts we do, they're in a different location than we are. All those arguments fall flat. They're just trying to justify their reasonings or being okay of killing little babies. And again, him using human beings is the correct term because they are. And they'll say, oh, they're just a fetus. That's just a medical term or a Latin term that just means offspring. It's like their cycle or where they're at right now in their stage of life. You wouldn't come to me and tell me that my 3-year-old who's a toddler is not a human being because we call him a toddler, or you should call him toddler, don't say human being. Well, the logic goes for that. They're a fetus, they're an offspring. Or offspring of what? They're offspring of a human being. They are human being. 60 million have been slaughtered. They have been. You can say whatever the term or medical thing they do whenever they have an abortion, whether it be drug induced and the baby passes away and then passes out or comes out, or there are procedures where the doctors will go in, and you can look this up. You can go online, you can find out where they'll go in and they'll tell the limbs off and they'll pull the babies out. So this is a slaughter of human beings, and I don't see how anyone can try to have the moral high ground or pretend they have a moral high ground and argue for the sake of killing these little babies. But I digress. Let Matt Walsh talk.
And an injustice. Well, because every single one of those 60 million were innocent and defenseless human beings. And it is always wrong to directly and intentionally kill innocent and defenseless human beings. It's as simple as that. You know, our position is very straightforward. That's our whole position. I just summed it up.
That's a good way of summing it up too. They say, well, what if this happens or what if that happens? Are you saying you're okay in this incident? I think you just summed it up. It is always wrong to kill a defenseless human being, an innocent defenseless human being. And who is more innocent, who is more defenseless than a little baby who may just be a few weeks old, a couple of months old, who is surviving in the mother's womb, and that mother's womb should be the safest place that they can be, but the mother or father wants to have them killed and then justify it. So it's sickening, but I'm gonna let Matt Walsh keep talking.
Are you killing an innocent and defenseless human being? Then it's wrong. That's it. The pro-abortion person here will respond with a few different moves. The first is to try to dehumanize the unborn, of course. He'll claim that the unborn child is not a human person and thus does not have the same moral standing and cannot make the same moral claims for itself that a, quote, real person can make. Now, the idea that an unborn child isn't human, which is something that you do hear from pro-aborts, even supposedly educated ones, is such a silly, absurd, anti-scientific notion that I'm not going to spend a lot of time on it. It is simply a scientific fact that the being in the womb is indeed a being, a living being, and it is a member of the human species. Now, we know that because all living things have to be a member of some species or another. If an unborn child isn't human, then what species is it? Now, oftentimes what you'll hear is, oh, it's not a human, it's a fetus. Well, that's like saying it's not a human, it's a boomer, okay? This is which maybe kind of works sometimes, but this is a stage of human development. Now, as for living, is it living? Well, there are only 3 states of being that a physical entity can be. And I think this holds true for the most part, except maybe at the quantum level. That would be most things are either alive, dead, or inanimate. Now, is the unborn baby inanimate? No. Inanimate objects don't grow, they don't develop, they don't move on their own, they don't consume food. You know, this podium right here is inanimate. It will never be anything other than this. It will decay and fall apart. You could cut it into pieces and build it into something else, but it's never on its own going to grow into something else because it's inanimate. Is the unborn child dead? Well, no, we know it's not dead because if it was dead, then we wouldn't need the abortion. So that leaves only living. Okay, so the baby is a living human. We've established that. We've settled that argument already. That's good. What about person, though? Well, this is a little bit more interesting because the pro-abortion individual, if he has any degree of sophistication, will probably concede that a, quote, fetus, or undocumented infant, as I like to call them, he'll concede that it's a living human, but he'll say, okay, fine, it's a living human, you're right about that, but it's not a person. And he'll say that it's not a person because it's still developing and it is entirely dependent on its mother for survival, and this, he will say, means that it lacks moral standing. But this view that personhood is acquired by degree and that it's forfeit if you are entirely dependent on someone else for survival clearly implicates more than just the unborn. It would seem that the sick, the infirm, the disabled, the elderly would all get caught up in this net. If we're not willing to do that, if we're not willing to look at an infant child at, let's say, 3 months out of the womb, or an elderly person in a nursing home, or a disabled person in a wheelchair, if we're not willing to look at them and say that, well, you're kind of not as much of a person as me, you're a little bit less people-y than me. If we're not willing to do that, if we're not willing to say that personhood is attained by degree contingent upon factors like self-sufficiency, then we are left with this idea that personhood is inherent, and all of its attending moral rights and dignities are inherent. Inherent means existing in something as a permanent, essential, and characteristic attribute of that thing. If something is inherent, that means that it belongs to the essential nature of that thing. The idea that our human dignity, our human rights are inherent, our personhood is inherent, this is an idea that lies very much at the foundation of our country. In fact, any notion of human rights depends on this idea. But, and this is just a logical conclusion, if an unborn baby does not have inherent value, then human value itself is not permanent or essential, and thus if an unborn baby does not have inherent value, then neither does anybody in this room. That's the thing about inherent value. You cannot gain it. That's why it's inherent. You either have it or you don't.
There you have it. Is either we have value or we don't have value. Either we all do or none of us do. We can't just pick and choose who we want to say, okay, they're human enough, like we do with children. Sounds like something else that we did a few years back, where we said that, or the slaves, they weren't really, or black people, they weren't really human. So we were able to count them as slaves, and that was evil. It was very evil for us to do. And now we're saying, trying to justify our own reasons why we're able to kill little babies. And the same thing happened with the Nazis. They said, well, the Jews, they weren't really human like we are. They're less than human. Therefore, it's okay to kill them. So we're trying to give a level of humanness to people, which allows us to give us a value. So what the Nazis did to the Jews, so they're not human like we are. Or when the white people and tried to treat the black people like they were lesser than humans. That's why we were able to do the things we did. That was evil on both parties. And now we are trying to say that little babies that are in the womb are not human. And you think you have the high moral grounds when you say these words. It's like, oh, I'm able to do that. This is what their arguments. I've had people tell me this, that the reasons why they're able to say they're not human like we are, or why they're able to justify the slaughter of these millions of babies, is because that the bigger person matters the most. And it's a straw man. It's a huge straw man attack saying that we don't care about the mothers. We definitely care about the mothers. There's a bunch of pregnant centers all around the country that want to take care of the mothers. So it is a fallacy, it's a lie, and it's a straw man to say that we don't care about the mothers. We care about both the people. When both people go into the hospital, we want both the people to come out. When pro-choice people say they support the mother and they want the most safest abortion you can get, there is no such thing as a safe abortion, because two people go in, one person comes out. One person dies in an abortion. Is the taking of the life of a human being. So if you want to be on the side like the Nazis were against the Jews, if you want to be on the side like America was when they were the way they treated black people, and now if you want to be on that side, you are. If you want to be on that side, you just keep being on the pro-choice. You're on that same side where you're trying to distinguish between who is human, who is not human, based off how you want to treat them. If you want to keep on killing little babies, then that is your choice. That's what you want to do. But that is you deciding that you want to be an advocate for the slaughter, the murder of little babies every single year. And that's what it gets under my skin. I just don't understand why anyone can do this, why anyone can claim that they have love in their hearts and that they're being loving and caring and advocating for the slaughter of little tiny babies. And but the good news is that we do have value, and that God is still in control. And if, as long as we keep praying, as long as we keep fighting that good fight and trying to defend the rights of all humans, because where would we be if it weren't for the Christians who were standing up against those who were trying to keep black people enslaved? Or where would we be if it weren't for people who were said they looked at the Nazis and what they were doing to the Jews and said that is wrong, that what you're doing is evil? And if it weren't for Christians and people like that standing up to this evil act, if it weren't for people, and you don't even have to be a Christian to see that it's wrong. There's many people on the pro-life side that don't even claim to be Christian just because they see that there is human dignity, that their people have value. And the people who say, oh, and I've heard people claim to be Christians and say that they're a pro-choice Christian. Just get out of that with this. Get out of that with that talk. How can you say you have the love of God in your heart and be an advocate for the murder of little babies? But again, God is in control. All we have to do is just keep praying, keep talking to God. We need to repent from this, and I'm so glad that Roe versus Wade was overturned. Now to the states, and if you're in a state that supports the slaughter of little tiny children, get out of that state. Pray for your leaders, pray for them. I pray that their hearts will be turned, that they will repent, they'll come to God, and they'll acknowledge what we all know, that all human life has value. And when we realize that, then we'll see that in a completely different light, that we need to take care of every person, the baby and the mother. We don't need to just see that, oh, if the mother wants to get rid of their baby, let's kill the baby. We need to take care of everybody. But if you're in one of those states, it's like, get out of that state if you can, but pray for your leaders, pray for them, pray their hearts will be turned. And I'm praying for every single one of you.